Hello, hello. This is the start of another episode of Write Once, Read Many. Oh. Oops, didn't have the headphones in, so it's playing through the speakers. Might get a little echo on the opening of the song, but so it goes. Alright. Let's try and get this link out there. Okay. Okay, well let's start the speed draw. The veil has arrived. This was louder than I had wanted to, so whoops in a lot of directions, but there we are. So this week we're doing chapter 12.4. We took a bit of a break by only doing one chapter last week and this week, but as a reminder, the audience participation question is, think up a Slaughterhouse-9 test for a nominee. Could be whatever, and for any nominee. Vale says, I'm setting up my freighter in No Man's Sky while I listen. Tedious freighter, not saying listening is tedious. Yeah. Not to date the episode too much for future listen backers, but yesterday is when Tears of the Kingdom came out, so I kind of stayed up pretty late playing Tears of the Kingdom. Hey, 2 plus 4 times 5, driving as always, of course. And boy, Tears of the Kingdom, pretty lit so far. I'm a big Breath of the Wild fan, so I know that's not what this stream is about, but boy, sometimes just gotta talk about Tears of the Kingdom. I had like a dumb thing that had happened a bunch of times that I wanted to mention, which is, sometimes when I go to type Wildbow, I mistype it, and the most common mistype that I have for some reason is I always just type out Wildboy, and I don't know. It was funny and dumb enough that I thought I'd bring it up. For this chapter, I thought the main themes are like fairness and unfairness as like a dual concept, as well as family. I'm assuming that my YouTube recommendations will get odd over time with Wildboy. That's what you're saying, Vale, but probably. Luckily, I'm not typing it into the search bar that often. Ooh. Let's see here. But kind of the fairness and unfairness is pretty obvious. They use it as a blanket to always say like, oh, we're gonna do fair stuff, but then the unfairness is everything they actually do. Vic says, heyo. Hey Vic. You missed me talking about how I'm always mistyping Wildbow as Wildboy. And then family, there's obviously the literal family between Regent Cherish. There's the weird, thing that Bonesaw does where she always says that the Slaughterhouse-9 is a family and so forth. And like Jack kind of pushes into this sometimes as well, and Siberian too. Greg has arrived. Hey Greg. And then there is the final little tie to the family, which I think is the most important, which is that when Skitter has to choose between staying with Tattletale or going to her dad, she'll choose to go to her dad at the behest of Tattletale. Unclear what she would have done if it was totally left up to her. But I think we'll take a moment to admire this art. I'm gonna drink a sip of coffee, so there'll be a moment of silence here while people maybe compliment how good the little Belto knives, and I've seen a lot of bone saws, and I quite like the hair texture on this bone saw, and like the like half knee socks that somehow stay up despite the blood and seemingly frayed tops. I mean, good outfits. And I mean, I don't know how Johnny Deppish that this Jack looks, but I think it's just the art style. Maybe Johnny Depp would look like this in this art style. Either way, real bastard. And with all that coffee drinking out of the way, I can read the comments here. Vale says, the art is gorgeous. I almost feel bad commenting because it's always gorgeous, and I say it too often, maybe. But since this is the designated time, there you go. And this is part of why I designate a time, so that you don't have to feel awkward. You can just go like, you know, even if it's the same thing, we can always say it's pretty lit. Vic says, I didn't necessarily want to look at Johnny Depp pics, TBH. That is fair enough. Greg says she's kind of a murderer Miss Frizzle style going there. It really is. She really does look like murderer Miss Frizzle. I guess Miss Frizzle would have probably gone by her first name as a child, but who knows? Who knows? Vic says Miss Frizzle is just redeemed Bonesaw. Yeah. Redeemed Riley. Getting into the 12.4 thing, I read a thing about the This Is Not an Exit thing from American Psycho and rewatched the last scene of American Psycho. Like, I've seen American Psycho, but somehow my brain did not remember. Like, I remember the ending scene, obviously, but in the movie version, it's just on a sign visually on screen. I was focused on the whole, Christian Bale face being like, oh, I'm Christian Bale and everything sucks. Anyway, so there's a way that you can read it as Jack being actually clever, like depending on how he's saying it to them, but if he's intending to imminently kill some of them, then it doesn't really work, because it's the whole thing of this is not an exit, and there's no way out of the prison of the psychosis of the character in American Psycho or his lifestyle. And if you're saying that to people you're about to kill, I don't know, it sounds like the death itself is the way out of the psychosis and the lifestyle. So checkmate, Jack. Plus, I kind of read it as an accidental self-own, where he himself is the one stuck in the prison of his own making. So, Jack, always self-owning. And maybe Tattletale is being more sarcastic than I'm giving her credit for, but I can't tell if she's really giving him kudos for the ref or not. Vale says, I don't think Sigma says, or Greg says, ooh, that's the deep lore. Vale, I don't think I've watched that, at least not all the way through. It just never helped me. The story, and then 2 + 4 × 5. I can't believe the Magic School Bus is literally alive. Yeah, it's a Bonesaw creation, actually. It seems to be happy with her, but, I mean, it's probably got a control frame. I don't know. But yeah, it was interesting. I read like basically an interesting mini essay on like what is meant by the book ending on the sentence "This is not an exit" or whatever. Um, and it's about how the character Patrick Bateman is just, even though he has seen the hollowness and the like terribleness of his life and the life of everyone around him, he is unable to change himself because it might be scary. Anyway, when Jack looks over their group, Skitter feels a chill as his eyes fall on her. She is flipping out, man, and for good reason. I mean, these people are kind of killer elites and real bastards. Even if they use the dogs in the darkness, she thinks the Siberian could just kind of jump around with her arms out and take out several of them. While she's thinking about this, Cherish calls her out to Jack for trying to get clever. And I'm going to read a big paragraph of Cherish text, and it's mainly because, like, this... I'll say it again in a minute because I wrote it down, actually, but this is the most... Is that why they call it worm? Moment of the entire book. When I looked at her with my power before, I called her the worm. Capital W. She spent some time being as low on the food chain as you can get while still being able to move under her own power. As low as someone can get while still having an identity of their own. But she's realized she's poisonous, dangerous, and in her own unique way, she's useful. Like a silkworm we harvest or an earthworm who works our gardens. She's even realized she's not alone, so long as she looks for friends among the other dirty, contemptible creatures. Speaking of which, I forgot to say, hi, little brother. And then, of course, Regina, it's like, fuck you. Vic says, she's just a little worm. And this little speech by Cherish has inspired more, is that why they call it worm, than any other points. And I don't think that this is why they call it worm. Just as far as things go. Maybe she is the metaphorical worm, but I kind of think there's more to it. Anyway, so she goes on to try to be more insulting. She's all like, "You're a worm who eats poop." And then Jack is like, "Nice one, bro. You got her." And then Jack is like, "We're specifically watching you, Skitter, so don't try anything." And then Skitter is like, "Alright." Jack then threatens the group that a few of them might be able to snipe him, but if they do, they'll definitely get killed back in retaliation. So, I don't know. Don't even try it. And I just put a side note here that I'd always wondered how long the Slaughterhouse-9 would stay together if he wasn't there. It mostly feels like they would like immediately disperse or start killing each other off. Bonesaw wanted to meet everyone and continues referring to the Slaughterhouse-9 as her family, so you can tell that she's got a totally normal and non-warped perspective. We also learn that she's compelled by some sort of surface-level idea of being fair, whatever that means from her perspective. And Bonesaw's characterization is actually really great here. She's making herself come up with something original each time they test a candidate, which is probably stemming from her tailoring her behavior to fit Jack, like what his wants are for a long-term defense mechanism. She's like reflexively keeping him close to her, so that she can like try and mold herself into whatever will keep him happy. 2 + 4 × 5 says, I feel like that paragraph is just one of 5 of 6 separate reasons why it's called Worm. I don't want to directly talk about what I think is the main reason it's called Worm, and like obviously it can be all of the different things, but I think that there's one that's like really solid where the fact that Taylor was not originally slated to be the like full protagonist and was supposed to like probably die in arc 8, for instance, so we'd be following someone totally else. Like I think it's sort of, I don't know how fully fleshed out his concept of the like whole setting was, but it seemed like the sci-fi aspects were kind of already stitched in from the beginning in terms of how the powers work. And there's like a metaphor around that I think works best. Anyway, I could talk around it all day, but I just would have to spoil a billion things and explain a billion things. And even though we're a spoilers medium podcast stream, it'd take too long. Where was I? Bonesaw needs to come up with a new test because the combined unfairness and similarity to whatever she did to Burnscar that her current test she's thinking of has is unacceptable. When Cherish says it's an unfair world, Bonesaw says that she equally wants Regent and Bitch on the team, and then Skitter feels yet another chill. All at once, Bitch's presence behind me felt ominous. She'd been picked by the Nine, and even when asked, she hadn't said anything about it. Why? Skitter is pretty easily able to piece together that Siberian picked Bitch, especially because they've locked eyes with one another and are just, doing a stare down for a while. So Jack moves the conversation along, talking about meetings going on without them. Can you blame us? Tattletale gave him a shrug. We were talking about how to kill you guys. Nope. We got 2 + 4 × 5 says 1, Taylor can control worms. Yep, definitely. 2, she has self-esteem of a worm. Works for me. 3, she worms her way into the Undersiders. Yeep. 4, Cherish's speech. 5, spoiler reason. And 6, another spoiler reason. See, I definitely have at least 2 spoiler reasons, and I'm wondering if they're the same ones or if there's like more that I haven't thought of or something. So we can talk about it as it spools out. So be sure to bring it up if you feel like there's if I'm passing up an opportunity in the future to talk about why indeed is this why it's called Worm. There's a moment that you could read as a comedy beat here where like 5 of their members of the group all turn to look at Tattletale with a horrified look at the same time. And then Jack laughs a whole bunch, and he's trying to do that thing where he's smugly explaining stuff, and then Tattletale just goes, sure. At this point, Jack goes on explaining about how he's here for Regent and Bitch, and they're going to test their new members. And I had always kind of thought of the timeline of how long the Slaughterhouse 9 had been active was a little bananas with the ideas that they were always going around massacring towns or whatever. And I realized reading this part more closely like this time and thinking about it more, that they probably spend the majority of the time they do anything recruiting capes. Because, like, they seem to rarely have a full roster. In the files they had on them, they had 8 members. They have 8 members now. I don't think we ever see them with specifically 9 members in anything except a flashback. They're just, like, constantly changing in and out members. And, like, I'll talk about it more, but the whole recruitment of Cherish kind of timelines a little bit, but anyway, so we get from Regent, and if we fail, we die? No, nobody passes every test, and the punishment for failing a test is up to the individual who assigned it. Sometimes death, yes. Sometimes something different. but it's always worse. So, Regent makes a play, asking what Cherish had to do for her tests, and Bonesaw tries to shut it down, saying he's cheating, but he says that he just wants to know, and he'll make sure not to copy whatever she did. So Jack likes the idea of adding a challenge to things and starts to spill. It seemed like he already wanted to talk about this, and Regent was just being like socially aware and kindly giving him an opportunity to talk. So I'll probably skip most of the stuff about like what the tests were down into the powers knowledge section. I mean, it's not exactly powers knowledge, but whatever. And then the important bit is that Cherish was put through a multi-day gauntlet of bullshit before the whole by the whole team, culminating in the mannequin test, in which Cherish had just failed another test and been punished for it, and so kind of went hard in terms of altering herself in a way that was bad for her, and getting the worst tattoo I've ever heard described. It's like super gross. It altered the levels of her skin to a degree that's noticeable from where Skitter's standing, like far away from her in a parking garage. And she had to murder, torture a whole bunch of tattoo artists and their families to get a tattoo this bad. Vic says, at least it's good quality. Yeah. And I bet... Vic, what's that style of tattoo that we kind of low-key hate? It's like the American traditional or something. I'm probably saying the wrong name, but what if it was also in that style? Oh boy. Skitter notices that the light had gone out in Cherish's eye. Vic says, man, I don't remember, but true. The light had gone out in Cherish's eye, and Jack he's reveling in it. He's all talking about liminality and stuff, and how the whole process helped her integrate into the group. She got absorbed into his glob of people. And Regent gets Jack to reveal his test, and he's all proud of himself, like, I just said I liked their ideas, so I picked to do all of them again. Kind of unimpressive stuff, if I'm gonna be honest. So Bonesaw brought more to the table than he did on that test, as far as I'm concerned. She brought Hatchet Face back to life so that Crawler could do a test, still without having to actually do a test. And apparently she failed 3 of those. The Hatchet Face, maybe the burn scar again, and then unclear. Oh, maybe it counts as a failure to get caught by Siberian, even if she lets you go. And she was caught by Siberian twice the first time. Who knows? 2 + 4 × 5 is leaving. Bye. Have a decent work or whatever. And I look forward to hearing what nonsense you have to say to us while listening back to the recording of the rest. So we get, well, sis, I thought you were running headlong into a fate worse than death. I stand corrected. You're already there, and you did it to yourself. This is the part where I'd threaten to kill you, except they are going to do it so much better than I ever could. Can't do it yourself? Can't do it yourself? Why do you have to rely on them? So Cherish tries to dodge Tattletale's question, and she's all like, I'm sensing smugness from Tattletale, as though that were not always the case. And Jack pushes for an answer to Tattletale's question, then Cherish kind of flips out and yells at Jack. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, saying that you're sensing smugness from Tattletale is like, I looked up at the sun and it was all bright. It's kind of, okay. When Tattletale says that she's trying to manipulate him, Jack's like, I know. And this is where Tattletale accidentally steps on a conversational landmine and points out that Cherish is using her power in really small amounts, slowly trying to Pavlov the Slaughterhouse Nine into loving her, or whatever. And Jack is annoyed at this reveal, but Tattletale misreads the situation and keeps talking. It was probably her plan from the start. Jack cuts her off at this point by slashing her face with a knife across the room. It's a violent enough hit that it splorches blood onto Skitter's face, totally covering her costume goggles and getting it in her mouth, too. It all happens fast enough that she doesn't even realize what happened at the moment. Greg says, slowly trying to glory girl the Slaughterhouse Nine into loving her. Oh, wait. I mean, I think, Glory Girl could have been just a typical Slaughterhouse Nine member if she became Gory Girl. And I mean, having someone on your team who like fear explosions, your enemies, on top of their regular fear, not too bad. It's Slaughterhouse 9-ish. She super splorches people with her force field, and then she makes you scared of it. It's a little too basic for them, but whatever. Where was I here? So yes, Gru. I'm not gonna shout it because I'm not gonna shout right now. But Gru's all like, "You fucking bastard," with his voice distorted by his power. And Skitter wipes the blood from her mask, and Regent and Sundancer are already trying to tend to Tattletale, but there's like tons of blood everywhere. Jack's all like, "You spoiled my game. I was being an actor." And Cherish is shocked that they knew. This is obviously bad news for her, and she didn't sense anything, because Bonesaw had put in the implants to cover it up, which she probably did when she had turned off Cherish's power for 2 days, twice. Boop, 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 boop. As soon as she has her bearings, Skitter gets to work trying to staunch Tattletale's wound. There's a lot of gross pressing and bleeding, the usual stuff. Jack's still working himself up a bit more about how she ruined everything. Cue Rebecca Bunch. Cherish is all worried about her safety, and Jack brushes her off. Skitter is having to keep herself from hulking out. Her power is it's like crackling in her awareness, and it's boiling emotions and so forth, but she's saying no for now. No powers, please. Let's see. Vale says, they would totally have made her take the name Glory Hole. Then Tattletale would get cut again when she claimed credit. Well, I think if she joined the Merchants, she would be Glory Hole. She would definitely be Gory Girl, because they, Jack's got this idea for names where they have to be like stupid, but I think like he wants murder related, not like sex related. And Vic says, I think you mean Tattletale would get a cut of all their jobs since she's copyrighted the name. Yes. Anyone who uses Glory Hole in the future, those two words together, has to pay Tattletale, and by extension, Wildbow. So, watch out for that. When you use that word constantly. But Skitter continues to focus on Tattletale and has Regent hold her in place and tear off costume pieces to soak up blood. Jack says not to bother saving her, and Bonesaw gets mad about Gru swearing, and then finally goes off, then goes off on a tangent about putting Tattletale's teeth outside her mouth, so the skin doesn't get in the way, whatever that means. At this point, Jack finally gets around to the purpose of meeting them here. He's here to give them a warning, not to drink water from the city until the Slaughterhouse 9 are gone. Because Bonesaw is using biological warfare as a way to incentivize the heroes to play along with them. Vale says, it's the real way Tattletale makes her fortune. Yeah, she's just copywriting jokes. They also have a second warning that in 34 minutes, Shatterbird will blow up all the glass in the city, including everything from device screens to beach sand. So, Dad, the people in my territory. I had to warn them, but I looked down at Tattletale and felt paralyzed. Yeah, this is a sticky situation, and not just because everyone's covered in blood. Jack says that's mainly it, and that meeting the candidates was nice. Instead of letting them leave at this point, though, Tattletale gets her notebook and writes a message. With Sundancer and Skitter helping her, she's able to get out that she wants to make a deal. And at first, Skitter wants to focus on getting Tattletale help. Then Tattletale straight up bites her hand, and then Skitter calls out to Jack that they want to make a deal. I cut out some of it, and I just put, she wants to know what happens if more than one person is left at the end. We pit them against one another. She, I think she wants to play a game. So the deal is more or less that if half or more of the candidates could survive the tests, then the Slaughterhouse-9 will leave the city with a volunteer new member from the remaining candidates. Jack is most surprised that she thinks that half could pass the test. He doesn't think it's possible, but it piqued his interest. Brockton Bay has its share of badasses, Jack. Skitter's all being... she's super hard right now. Not... hard like... you know what I mean. At first, Jack's like, what do I get out of it? And then they say, it's a game. It'll be fun. It's a nice challenge to mix things up. And then Skitter appeals to Bonesaw a little about fairness, and Bonesaw likes the idea. So Jack says they'll discuss it as a group, but they'll need to come up with a steep penalty for the other side if they lose. So they turn to leave a second time, and by this point Tattletale is she's in a bad way. And Skitter's hands feel like rigid blocks of stone where they're trying to hold the injury in place. Vic says super hard. Yep, super hard. Hard like her stone hands holding that injury in place. I don't know what to do, I said, barely audible to myself. I looked up at Gru and said, louder, I don't know what to do. Gru moves in to help with the face thing, and Tattletale tells Skitter to go to her dad. Go! I stood, wobbling slightly as I backed away from her. She looked so fragile, lying on her side, blood pooling beneath her head, around her dirty blonde hair, and I was leaving her there. Ballistic says that they'll get Coil to send transportation. It's something of a relief to know that medics are going to be on the way for Tattletale, but Skitter doesn't think a car will be reliable enough to get her to her house with the city being all wrecked up. So she starts running. She runs right past the 4 members of the Slaughterhouse-9, and they don't even say anything as she passes. While she runs to get she gets her cell phone out, and she calls home, but she gets a message that the number is out of service. And so I just grabbed the last section of the chapter. I feel like a lot of the chapter ends are really strong, so I have a hard time feeling like I do a good summary of them, so I do pull a lot of final paragraphs out. But judging distances wasn't a great strength of mine. How many blocks? How far did I have to run to reach my dad? 5 miles? 6? I was a practiced runner, but the streets here weren't all in the best shape. Some were flooded, others were strewn with debris, still more suffering in both departments. There were areas that were blocked off, and I had less than 30 minutes. I guess that should have had a longer pause, because that's a paragraph break, but... Anyway, my final chapter thoughts. So there's a cool moment where a paragraph is just blood. Just the one italicized word as a full sentence, which I like. And we'll see more frequent use of like interesting page blocking and like paragraph use and like just different page formatting for like stuff as time goes on. And I really like it when it happens, and it happens way more in Ward because I think Wildbow got a lot more confident about it. So full Garth Marenghi, yeah. Blood, 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 and bits of sick. And oh, I don't know how you guys had felt on your first reads, but when I first read this, I thought it was a really good chapter, really tense. And actually, I kind of sometimes I don't like chapters that are this like oppressive, like emotionally, where they're like under so much threat constantly. But I think what I liked about it was that it was tense and it felt very. The risk felt real for whatever reason. And when Tattletale gets attacked, it seems like she could actually die or whatever. Um, so media doesn't always pull that off. A lot of times you're just like, okay, they'll be fine, and like you play along with it because that's how stories work. But anyway. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is they spent like minimum 2 weeks on the whole Cherish recruitment debacle and seemingly hadn't made an appearance big enough to be noticed since Hatchetface died. So it's unclear how long she's been in the group, but it seems like it's been a few weeks minimum, maybe over a month since she joined. And I'm glad I've finally been able to sort of square the circle with how they've been so consistently active, because in the past my brain was just like, how is anyone not talking about just the almost constant glass explosions taking out entire cities at a time? And it's because like it does happen a lot, but it's like every couple weeks instead of like every day. um So, yeah. So, for the arc stuff, there was just this one chapter, and I thought this was a really good hinge point in the arc. It goes from, like, um, the opening chapter, the meeting chapter, the meeting with the Travel Siders chapter, and then discussing strategy to this, like, tense conversation. So, it's the other three chapters were not very tense until the very end of 12.3, when the tension was the start of this conversation, which only got more tense with time. And then, like, at this point, the most of the rest of the arc is kind of like rushing action scenes and stuff. So, yeah, I think there's a little room to breathe between some of the stuff later, but it does a good. This is a good roller coaster arc where it builds up a little bit, then gives you some steep drops of like your stomach swooshing or whatever. The fast parts and the violent parts of the swooshes, and the talky parts. Those are the part where you're ticking up the climbs. Moving on to the characters. Lisa, this is not the first time we've seen her press her luck a little too far, but boy, it didn't turn out super well this time. Yeah. Anyway, she is able to continue to scheme and strategize even when her face is slashed open. It's like the equivalent of how Taylor can like take any injury and keep fighting, basically. And Lisa is a badass. She's probably my, I talk about it all the time. She's tied with Taylor for my second favorite character. Then we got Alec. Alec does a lot in this arc. He pushes things so their group learns a lot more information. It's kind of like a much more successful version of what he tried to do with Bakuda in Arc 4. Kind of nails it. I guess I don't have that much to say other than that he did a good job. Got Rachel. I don't think says a word this chapter, but she stands, she stares, she ominous. Also, I never thought about it until like literally just now. But if Rachel and Taylor were on good terms, they could have ridden the dogs to her dad and like generally around the city much faster and possibly saved more people. With the way that Taylor's going to try and save people on the way to her dad. Oh, she mentions it next chapter. Okay. I haven't been reading ahead. Like previously I had been reading ahead in the arcs, but I've been very busy. I will probably take the time pretty soon to read up through the end of arc 14 because I feel like there have been a couple moments where I just didn't learn quite all I wanted to. Like a thing in the Powers Knowledge section I'm going to talk about in a minute where I don't know quite if they say that Burnscar does the same test that Cherish had failed, or if we just never learn what that is. But I tried to read that chapter for it, like skim it, but it was taking... I took like 10 minutes on like this minor fact, so I was like, okay, I gotta move on. Yeah. If they had a repaired relationship, Taylor could have done that. But I guess if she was moving at dog speed, maybe she couldn't have left the messages for people for long enough for them to read them. It's a trade-off. Brian. Brian is rightfully very pissed off and vocalizes it when his teammate gets attacked. But I don't know. There's not like a lot he can do. There's not a lot the Undersiders have at their disposal right now, except for words. Sundancer, she's pretty helpful on the little medical thing when Taylor needs her, and she helps with the notebook. She's probably freaked out. She like, doesn't like violence. Doesn't like when you scoop out your enemy's eyes. We got Jack. Jack's being a real charmer once again. I don't know what to say about this guy. He's a great villain, but as like a dude, he's for me like a love to hate him kind of guy. So me talking about him would probably be me mostly saying how he sucks. But boy, yeah, he is a great antagonist foil for Taylor. Greg says, Sundancer is so picky. Yeah, I don't know. Jack kind of... He's very full of himself. He's been very successful at murder, so he thinks that because of his success at murder, his banter is really good, but it's just okay. But basically no one tells him his banter is just okay. Like, I think the ultimate thing that would torture Jack more than any of the fates worse than death would be a cape that constantly evades him killing them and constantly just keeps being like, you're pretty mid. You're just so mid at dialogue. And they don't even use a new insult. They just use because he hates staleness, so they just use the same stale insult on him forever while, like, I don't know, teleport dodging his attacks or something. And just, that would be true torture for him. Nothing he would ever do would stop them from their endless loop of using the same insult on him. Anyway. So Bonesaw. I think Bonesaw gets, like I said earlier, just really good characterization throughout the thing. she seems sort of like more random and chaotic than she is until you really like wrap your head around her psychology and stuff as you get to know the character. Because we'll see from Bonesaw's perspective at a certain point, and it's like her whole thing is like such a learned performance that she can't turn it off mostly at this point in her life. So yeah, she's a really great character, and all the little beats throughout the entire story that she's in like pretty much support the same like characterization. It's really, really solid. Like a masterpiece, even when you're judging among like I think the protagonists and the main side characters. And she's just so annoying. No swearing. So Cherish. We get a whole range of emotions from Cherish here. She runs the gamut. She's kind of... this almost feels like... I think this is like a really successful extension of her interlude. I feel like we really get to know her mindset in like a solid way. And then, I think maybe it's just like how I feel about it, but my opinion is that it's very easy to understand her internal like workings after we get that chapter, and it's very easy to map that onto all the scenarios she's in within the rest of the little arcs here. So that's pretty cool. Pretty good. So this is I guess me retroactively complimenting that chapter even more. Ballistic and Siberian, while they do add firepower and potential heat to the situation, they don't do anything in this chapter. They just stand there. So we don't learn that much about them, other than they like to stand there. Moving on to powers, knowledge, and world building, we learn about the tests that the Slaughterhouse 9 give. Mannequin always makes the candidate... what did I write? Oh, I was just misreading it. A mannequin always makes the candidate alter themselves in a way that costs them. And Siberian waits until half the candidates are gone and hunts the rest. Then Crawler is pretty uninterested in people such as Cherish, anyone who can't hurt him. So he used an excuse that she passed his test when she killed Hatchet Face, so that he wouldn't have to do anything. And, thanks to Bonesaw bringing Hatchet Face back for his second test, he still didn't have to do anything. So this all worked out for him. Crawler wins again in the end. The only information to go on, or that we really get to go on here, is that he has low investment in the tests, unless he thinks that the candidate could hurt him, such as Noelle, maybe Amy, if he just like walked up to her and let her do it, which like he would though, if he thought she could actually hurt him. Which other candidates could... Oh, you know who could hurt him is Armsmaster with a Nanothorn. I bet if he knew that Mannequin had the Nanothorn, he'd be flipping out trying to fight Mannequin right now. Anyway, Bonesaw used a parasite to take away Cherish's power for 48 hours. That would be permanent if she didn't drink enough blood, without specifying how much blood she needed to drink or what kinds would work. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention how long. When the Siberian was hunting people, like, she hunted Cherish for 3 days and 3 nights. So yeah. And then Shatterbird took a single shard of glass and locked Cherish in a room, slowly moving the glass toward her forever, with the implied threat of slicey stabby if she ever let it catch her. But that was right after Cherish was done with the Siberian's test, so she was already on the most sleep deprived you can kind of go on. Burnscar's previous test isn't revealed because Cherish failed, so Jack didn't want to tell. And I could not find, like I said earlier, for sure, if it was the same test. It seemed like it wasn't the same test, so I think we just never learn what the other one Cherish failed was. Because, like, to kill what she loves, what would Cherish kill? Herself? I don't even get it. Cherish is not connected to anyone. Then Jack likes to do the whole keystone thing, like from Theo's chapter, so he waits until last to do his test every time. And it seems like he's some sort of beta who can only do his thing after someone's already at their psychological breaking point. It's almost like he lets the others do the work for him and takes all the credit. So one of the only other things we learned really is Shatterbird has more offensive range than Cherish. So a little interesting tidbit for when they make their various shogi gambits later. And I think I'm going to move on. I was gonna do a bonus, but I didn't end up writing out anything for it. The chapter summary just took me so long to write. And again, part of that is because I haven't pre-read the other arcs, so I kind of spent time researching little things on other chapters that in the past I would have like front-loaded, so I need to get on that. Anyway, but the bonus was to come up with a Slaughterhouse 9 Sona, or existing characters becoming Slaughterhouse 9 characters. And I had thought about it. I thought there are a lot of capes whose powers don't really seem like vicious enough. I do think Regent would be a decent Slaughterhouse 9 member because of like the freaky, like he controls people, like even people with powers, and can like puppeteer them, or it's Slaughterhouse 9-esque. And then I had thought in the good guys, I just can't think of a way that... I mean, Clockblocker could definitely do bad stuff. Like, he could freeze someone, then, like, set up, like, a freeze points around them, so they're in, like a some sort of Iron Maiden of stabbies or something. But, I don't know. It's just too slow. It just doesn't feel like a Slaughterhouse 9 guy, you know? Can you guys think of any people who would be really good Slaughterhouse 9? Regent says, Vale says, Regent would not be part of the Slaughterhouse 9. He really doesn't like manipulative environments. Yeah, but it's more about, like, how would they apply their power to be, one of these fucks. And a lot of the powers I just don't think would be that great for it. I think Labyrinth would actually be a really good Slaughterhouse 9 member. Like, if they had her and were, like, more or less controlling her on her non-lucid days, and then she would, like, make her crazy bad place zone appear all the time, and then they'd be like, maybe you could make a rack so that we could pull people apart, and it would have fire under it, and spikes would fall from above, and you just keep adding more bullshit. There's a lot to work with there, I think. Vale says Amy would be perfect. I agree, they could just keep making weird nightmare monsters. Nilbog would be perfect. We haven't really seen him, but he was mentioned in a Who else? Who else have we seen who'd be okay at this shit? I feel like we've seen a lot of tame powers. Or like Skitter would be the best. Like I literally do think Skitter would be like an incredible Slaughterhouse 9 member. In terms of like a lot of aspects of her power, she can kind of do like the screamer thing with her bugs later, where she can talk through them and like freak people out that way. And she like senses and controls an area, and when she appears, it's like scary because like suddenly all the bugs are like moving around just as suddenly as Palpatine returned. And you know, she's freaking people out. Everything's, you know, everything goes wrong when she shows up. She's biting you. She's poisoning you a little bit. Greg says, any Tinker has potential, so add Squealer to the list, I guess. I literally thought of Kid Wen, and I was like, I guess he could do something, but like, oh, or Hacking Leet. Slaughterhouse Leet. Thank you, Greg. I think Slaughterhouse Leet could work because a lot of his inventions backfire when you try and use them. Like they talk about how Coil had to use a like backup timeline over and over again to try a device they had commissioned, but it kept like killing him whenever he would use it, which I find very funny. What else? But some of the powers, although very murderous, like Sundancer, I just thought like it kind of scours things away too quickly. Like it's too immediately destructive. Or like Ballistic, kind of same. It's so immediately destructive, and like the Slaughterhouse 9 are more about like either being like gross or like torture murder or like psychological torture. Like, you know, but not like he can rocket a car into you. So, like, that's why I thought Ballistic was a bad fit. But who am I to say? Greg says, all that means is you have to get more creative with it. That's right, that's right. So the true answer is all of them. Siberian is super deadly after all. Oh yeah. Could she disallow her unimmunity to his power so that he could fire her like a bullet? But also, yeah, Siberian can go kind of soft. Like Siberian can move in and like grab you and slowly kill you, whereas I can't. Maybe Ballistic could find a way. He'd like attach. He'd attach a handcuff to you or something, and like rocket an object off to like pull your hand off. Okay, this is getting bad. I'm thinking of ways that. All right, moving on. So we've all found some good ways to use powers in bad ways. Moving on to audience participation. The question was, think up a Slaughterhouse 9 test for a nominee, and some answers that we got from the crowd. Vale said that they would get a message. Vale, show up at address at 8:05 p.m. exactly. Do not be early or late. This is part of the test. I don't even know why the Slaughterhouse 9 wants me to meet me to begin with, but it's certain death to defy them, so I show up at exactly 8:05 p.m. It's Gigglesworth's Comedy Club? What the actual heck? I'm still terrified, but now I'm also confused. Jack meets me just inside. It's 8:05. And you are up, Vale. 20 minutes set. Make us laugh and keep the audience in stitches or everybody dies. Here's a gun. It might help to inform the audience that they need to laugh at your jokes. Have fun. I tried to imagine what would be the most horrifying for me personally, and went with it. Thank you, Vale, for letting us know that you're very bad at stand-up comedy. I will take this into account, and you will be tested on it later. So, Vale says, I may not sleep tonight from writing that. Yeah. So then 2 plus 4 times 5 has in all bolded text, which I think is to emulate the crazy speech of a Monster Mash character. Try your best to kill me. I'll be sitting here. If you fail to make me stronger, or if I get bored, I'll kill you. Bring your friends if you want. I'll give you a few minutes head start. Crawler, probably. Which I think that's a pretty good one. Yeah, that's a crawler test. It fits his goals. So yeah, and I think I'm not creative enough to come up with a Slaughterhouse 9 test. Like, all mine are just ones that are already in the book. I'm like thinking through, I'm like, what if? And I'm like, no. What if? No. Greg says, this is probably Chuckles' test. Yeah. And Chuckles' brain moves super fast, so your jokes have to be super funny at high speeds, too. Or slow speeds? Whichever. Both. Yeah. So, yeah. I think that's probably fine. I'm just gonna not name a... My test will be what Jack said. All of the other tests. Everything that everybody else said. Do that. Vale says, luckily my jokes are equally funny at all speeds. Oh boy. And then for the next 2 chapters, my audience participation question is do you think that no, I don't have one. I'll try and come up with one, and I'll put it in the audience participation thing on the thing, and then I'll read it at the start of next episode. That's part of why I read them at the start of the episodes, so that it's slightly more okay on binge reading or listening to my streams later, which I assume someone, even a single person, will do. That you will still get to hear the question before it's being asked in the moment. Anyway, so moving on to the finale where I read out the links and start saying goodbye to everybody. I'm going to turn on Ye Old Song. So, as we always talk about, the music used in this episode is Infestation by our good friend ScarlettXOX. You can find her at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. Our Discord link can be found in the stream description and in the channel description. The author of the work being discussed here can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. There's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. And, yeah, that's all I got for this week, so I'm going to mute myself and let the outro play. You know what? For the heck of it, I'm going to play the speed draw again. Oh, that didn't work out. No, I'm going to play the speed draw again. Goodbye!